What's going on, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about the best meta builds that you can possibly get your hands on for Season 4 of Battlefield 6. Now obviously, not a whole lot has changed. All the weapons that have been good are still good. But Season 4 has introduced 3 new weapons that are probably the best that we've gotten so far. So I want to go over those first, starting with the EF88. Out of all the new weapons, the EF88 is definitely one of my favorites. As for its performance, it performs just as well as every other assault rifle for the most part. It's got a decent muzzle velocity, its ADS time is about the same as every other assault rifle, it's got decent recoil, decent movement speed multiplier, and decent sprint recovery. But the one thing that sets it apart from other weapons is that it's a lot easier to control. So for this build, I decided to use the long suppressor to minimize that recoil buildup, the extended barrel to increase my muzzle velocity, the ribbed stubby mostly to improve my ADS speed, but the extra recoil is also pretty helpful, and then I have the lightweight ammo to improve my ADS movement speed, the aftermarket buffer to just smooth out the recoil a little bit, and the violet laser to help improve my ADS movement accuracy. Now this build is pretty typical. You can put all these attachments on most other weapons and it'll perform just as well. So if you wanted to try something different, you could put the compensated brake on instead, switch to any of the other 10-point lasers for better hipfire accuracy, and with the last 5 points, you could switch to hollow point ammo, or you could get rid of the buffer to put on the synthetic tip ammo, which is going to give you a 3-shot headshot up to 75 meters. Now obviously this is going to perform pretty well, but since you don't have a suppressor, you're going to have to deal with being spotted a lot easier on the minimap and in world while you're firing. So that is something you have to think about. This AR really isn't hard to control either, it's pretty similar to the SOR 556 in that way. And even if I take my mouse off my mouse pad, you can see there's not a whole lot of recoil that you have to deal with. The recoil variation isn't that harsh either, so you can get long range kills pretty easily while holding down the trigger. That's for the build I was actually trying to show off. It's going to be really easy to control. The recoil is going to be slightly worse because you don't have that extra recoil reduction from the compensated brake, but it's still going to be very easy to get long range kills with this build. This next build is going to be a bit more focused on RedSec, but it'll still perform just as well in multiplayer. So I still have the long suppressor and the violet laser, but I decided to take off the aftermarket buffer and the grip so I can use the cryogenic barrel, the 36 round mag, and synthetic tip ammo. And like I said, you really don't need a grip on this AR at all. It is going to be a little bit shakier in longer range gunfights, but it's still very easy to maintain. And like I said with the headshot multiplier, you're going to get a 3-shot kill up to about 75 meters. The muzzle velocity is going to be a bit slower since you don't have the extended barrel, so it is going to be a bit better to use this at mid-range at most, but it can still perform very well in longer range combat if you needed to push it out that far. Next is going to be the Broad 3, which is definitely one of my favorite out of the 3 new weapons we got this season. As for its raw performance, it's going to perform just as well as the M433 in close range combat since it shares the same damage and rate of fire, but since it's classified as a carbine, its damage is going to drop off a bit faster at longer ranges. But just like the EF88, it's very easy to control, so you can reach out into those distances pretty easily. This build for the Broad is also going to be pretty similar to the EF88. You have the long suppressor, the extended barrel, and the violet laser, as well as the aftermarket buffer. But instead of the ribbed stubby, I decided to use the slim angled grip to improve my draw speed, my sprint recovery, and my ADS speed, and the hollow point ammo to improve my headshot damage. And just like the EF88, you could switch to any of the other 10-point lasers for better hipfire accuracy, or you can get rid of the aftermarket buffer so you can equip a fast mag or the light suppressor to get rid of that hipfire sway penalty. One thing I've seen people say about this carbine is that it has worse recoil than the M433, which I guess is the case if you look at it on paper, but when you take this thing into the firing range or in game, you can see that it's really not the case at all. It's going to be a lot easier to control at almost any situation. And even without the violet laser, it doesn't have a whole lot of spread, so you can reach out into farther range distances pretty easily. The cool thing about this AR is that you can get a lot more bullets out per burst before the recoil or the spread takes effect, which makes it a lot more effective at range compared to some other weapons. Even while you're moving, you can get some pretty long bursts out before the spread takes effect, which is going to make it very effective in almost any situation. This next build is going to be a bit more focused on ranged engagements. So for this build, I got rid of the aftermarket buffer so I could switch to the light and suppressor, and I got rid of the hollow point ammo so I could use the canted stubby and a fast mag. This build is going to perform pretty similarly to the last one, but with the canted stubby, it's going to be a lot easier to control, which is going to make it way more effective in longer range combat. And obviously the spread is going to be a little bit worse since the grip does have that accuracy penalty while you're moving, but if you're burst firing, it shouldn't be much of an issue at all. This last build for the Broad is focused entirely on RedSec. So just like the other builds, I still have the extended barrel and the violet laser. But as for the rest of the attachments, I have the compensated brake, the 6H64 vertical grip, the 36 round mag with lightweight ammo, and the rail cover to improve my draw speed and my sprint recovery. And just like the other two builds, this is going to be very easy to control, and with the 6H64 vertical grip, you're going to be able to reach out into farther distances pretty easily without many issues. And unlike the other builds, I would recommend keeping the violet laser on since it is offsetting the ADS penalty from the grip. But if you only wanted to use this for close to mid-range, you could switch it out for the red or green laser for better hipfire accuracy. Last but not least, we have the VSSM, which isn't terrible by any means, but in my opinion, it could be a little bit better. For a DMR, it's really not going to perform very well at all, since it has a 303 meter per second muzzle velocity, and there isn't really anything you can do to increase it. But if you wanted to use this for short to mid-range engagements, it can do pretty well. For this first build, I have the standard suppressed barrel, the violet laser, the slim angled grip, long-range ammo to improve the bullet drag, and the mag catch to slightly increase my reload speed. With the VSSM being a DMR, it's really not going to do a good job at longer distances. As you can see, it takes a long time for the bullet to travel since the muzzle velocity is so low, but it's going to perform a lot better in close range scenarios. And no matter what you put on this DMR, you're going to get a 3-shot kill up until about 5 meters, a 4-shot kill up until about 10 meters, and then a 5-shot kill until about 75 meters. The semi-auto fire rate is also pretty decent. If you have a good trigger finger and you're good at tracking at the same time, you can get some kills pretty quickly. The hipfire accuracy is also the best out of all the DMRs, which is going to let you get kills pretty easily from 5 to 10 meters. This next build is going to be a full auto build, which also performs pretty decently in close range combat, but you're going to have a hard time using it at farther ranges. For this build, I use the 20-point barrel, which is going to bring my spotting distance up to 21 meters instead of 9 meters. I also have the folding stock equipped, and other than that, I still have the violet laser and long-range ammo equipped. And like I was saying, it's going to perform pretty well in close range combat. You're going to get a time to kill that's very similar to the SCW, but at farther ranges, it's going to be a lot harder to use because of the recoil. Now you could get rid of the long range ammo and the violet laser so you could equip the alloy vertical grip to improve your recoil, but the problem with getting rid of the long range ammo is your only other option is penetration ammo, which is going to increase your recoil, which is going to make the gun feel more or less the same as it would without a grip. The one cool thing about this DMR is that its base headshot multiplier is 1.8, which is going to give you a 2-shot headshot up close, and a 3-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. So next we can talk about the rest of the weapons, starting with the M433, which is going to perform about the same as it has been since Season 3. With this build, it is focused a bit more on versatility, so you can reach out into the 30 to 50 meter distance pretty easily, but it's also going to perform just as well as you'd expect at closer ranges. The recoil variation is going to make it a bit harder to control at farther ranges past 50 meters, so you will probably need to tap fire, but otherwise this is still a pretty good build in most situations. And for this build, you have the long suppressor to minimize their recoil buildup, the extended barrel to increase your muzzle velocity, the canted stubby for a moderate improvement to recoil, the fast mag with lightweight ammo, and the violet laser to offset the accuracy penalty from the grip. This next build is going to be a bit more focused on close range combat. And for this build, you have the CQB suppressor, the short barrel to increase your hipfire accuracy, the slim angled grip to increase your recoil control, your ADS speed, and your draw speed, and the fast mag with lightweight ammo. And since this build is focused on short range, you are going to have a harder time getting kills past around 35 meters, but the recoil is still pretty manageable up to that distance. The hipfire is pretty good with just the short barrel, but if you wanted to, you could get rid of the lightweight ammo and the fast mag so you can equip a red or a green laser. For the B36, the build is going to be pretty similar to what it's always been since launch, and for this build, you'll want the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, slim angled grip, lightweight ammo, the aftermarket buffer, and the violet laser. You obviously don't need the violet laser since the slim angled grip doesn't come with an accuracy penalty, so if you wanted to, you could get rid of the laser for a better barrel or a bigger mag. And obviously, the B36 is still really good for most situations. The time to kill is a bit slower up close, but at range, it's going to be very effective in most situations. The recoil isn't super hard to control, but the recoil variation can get out of hand at times. This next build is going to include synthetic tips, but other than that, it's pretty much the same as the first build. So you're still going to have the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, and the aftermarket buffer. But to actually equip the synthetic tips, I decided to get rid of the violet laser since it's not really offsetting any penalties, and the bullet spread is already pretty decent up to around 50 meters. And with synthetic tip ammo, you'll be able to get a 3-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. And then for the M16, what you're going to want is the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, the ribbed stubby, the aftermarket buffer, and the violet laser. But like I've been saying, you could switch it to another 10-point laser, or you can get rid of it for a fast mag or lightweight ammo. And it's going to perform just as well as you'd expect if you've used it before. It's not going to be very hard to control, and since it's a burst fire weapon, you're not going to be dealing with much spread. And for a build with hollow points, you'll want the long suppressor, the heavy extended barrel, the slim angled grip, the 30-round fast mag, hollow point ammo, and the aftermarket buffer. This build is still going to feel pretty similar, but with hollow point ammo, you're going to get a 3-shot headshot up close, which will be 1 burst, and past that range, it's going to take 4 shots to the head to kill, or 2 bursts. And for a full auto build, you'll want to keep the long suppressor and the slim angled grip, switch to the extended barrel, get rid of the fast mag and the hollow point ammo, just so you have enough points to put on the full auto receiver. And with all this put together, it's going to feel pretty similar to the DRS. It does have slightly more recoil variation, so you do need to be a bit more careful at longer ranges, but other than that, it's going to feel pretty much the same. And for the M4, what you're going to want is the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, the ribbed vertical grip, the aftermarket buffer, and the 20-point blue laser. This build is more focused on versatility, so you have decent hipfire for close range, and you have enough recoil control to reach out to farther distances pretty easily. But just like the M433, the recoil variation can get in the way at longer ranges, so you do have to be a bit more careful. If you wanted to focus a bit more on RedSec, what you're going to want is the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the canted stubby, the 36-round mag with lightweight ammo, and the aftermarket buffer. And just like the first build, it's going to feel more or less the same at closer ranges, and it's going to be a bit difficult to use at longer ranges, so this build is better suited for the 10 to 30 meter range. For the SG553, you're going to want the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the canted stubby, lightweight ammo, the aftermarket buffer, and the violet laser to offset the ADS penalty from the grip. And if you wanted to focus a little bit more on close range combat, you'll want to keep the long suppressor, but switch to the basic barrel, the alloy vertical grip, and subsonic hollow point ammo. This will bring your muzzle velocity down to 247 meters per second, which is going to be pretty slow for longer range combat, but this is also going to bring your 2D spotting distance to 9 meters, which will make you a lot harder to find in close range combat. And with hollow point ammo equipped, you'll get a 2-shot headshot up until about 5 meters, a 3-shot headshot up until about 20 meters, and a 4-shot headshot up until about 70 meters. For the SGX, what you'll want is the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, the 30-round fast mag, the aftermarket buffer, and the 20-point blue laser so you have some better ADS accuracy and hipfire accuracy. And obviously this build is going to be focused more on versatility, so you can reach out to farther ranges pretty easily, and you have good enough hipfire to get some easy kills up close. But if you wanted to focus entirely on a hipfire build, what you'll need is the CQB suppressor, the short barrel, the 36-round mag, the aftermarket buffer just to help out a little bit if you need to ADS, and the 20-point green laser. And with all this put together, you're going to have some pretty insane hipfire accuracy. You can even reach out to the 20-meter range pretty easily if you're standing still. And the builds are going to be pretty similar with the MP5, but instead you'll want the lightened suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, the 30-round fast mag, synthetic tip ammo, and the aftermarket buffer. And just like the first SGX build, this build is more focused on versatility, so you can reach out to farther distances pretty easily while still remaining effective at closer ranges. And with synthetic tip ammo equipped, you'll be able to get a 3-shot headshot up until about 10 meters, and a 4-shot headshot between 20 and 75 meters. And for the hipfire build on the MP5, you'll want the CQB suppressor, the basic barrel, the 30-round fast mag, the aftermarket buffer, and the 30-point blue laser. The last SMG is going to be the SCW. Since the SCW has the best damage range out of all SMGs, it is better to build it for versatility in my opinion. And to do so, you'll want the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, the 20-round mag, and hollow point ammo. And with hollow point ammo equipped, you'll be able to get a 2-shot headshot up until about 5 meters, a 3-shot headshot up until about 20 meters, and then a 4-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. And with the rest of these attachments put together, you'll be able to reach out to farther distances pretty easily, but the recoil variation can get out of hand in some situations. For the LMGs, we have the DRS, which is going to utilize the long suppressor, the extended barrel, the slim angled grip, the 30-round fast mag with lightweight ammo, the aftermarket buffer, and the violet laser. And if you wanted to use synthetic tips, all you really need to do is get rid of the violet laser. And with synthetic tips equipped, you'll get a 3-shot headshot out to 75 meters. But otherwise, it's going to perform just as well as you'd expect it to. The recoil variation is a little bit crazy with a slim angled grip, so if you have the violet laser equipped, I would recommend switching to the full angled grip at the least to get that recoil under control. For the DMRs, my personal favorites are the LMR and the SVK. The LMR obviously doesn't do as much damage as the SVK, but the LMR doesn't have a lot of recoil, which lets you spam a lot of shots in quick succession. And for this build, you'll want the Light and Suppressor, the Extended Barrel, the 15-round Fast Mag, and Synthetic Tip Ammo. And with Synthetic Tip Ammo, you'll be able to get a 2-shot headshot up until about 20 meters, and a 3-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. And for the SVK, you'll want to use the Light and Suppressor, the Extended Barrel, the Slim Angled Grip, the 10-round Fast Mag with long-range ammo, and the Violet Laser. The only real downside to the SVK is that the recoil can be a bit unwieldy, which will make longer range combat a bit harder, but once you get used to it, it can be pretty easy to get kills at longer ranges, and you can take on snipers pretty easily. And even without any ammo types to increase your headshot multiplier, you can get a 1-shot headshot up close, and a 2-shot headshot up until about 75 meters. For the snipers, you're obviously going to have the M2010 and the Mini Scout, which both perform pretty similarly, but the M2010 does have a sweet spot, which will help a lot more in longer range combat. And for the M2010 build, you'll want to use the Light and Suppressor, the Extended Barrel, long range ammo, the ADS bolt, and the Violet Laser. Ideally, you won't want to use a laser on a sniper since it will be easier for enemies to see you, and the improvements to recoil recovery on the Light and Suppressor will let you take follow-up shots a lot quicker. And for the Mini Scout, you'll want the Light and Suppressor, the Extended Barrel, the Slim Angled Grip, the 10-round Fast Mag, the Anti-Glare Coating, and the Violet Laser. The only reason I don't have the rangefinder on any of my sniper builds is because you can actually change the zeroing distance without it. And if you look at the bottom right corner, you can see it says 100 meters, and if I just hit 0 on my keyboard, it changes to 200. And if I hit it a couple more times, I can go all the way up to 500 before it resets back to 100. And if you have it set to 200, you'll be able to aim directly at people's heads up until about 230 meters without much of an issue. So that's going to be about it for the video. And like I said earlier, not a whole lot has changed for weapons. The only real difference is we have 3 new weapons that are pretty much exact copies of weapons we already have. But with that being the case, they're still pretty good for what they are. If you enjoyed watching or you found the video helpful, then consider dropping a like and subscribing to the channel so you can keep up with the best tips, tricks, and breakdowns in Battlefield 6. And if you want to see any other weapons shown up in the future, then drop a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Grab what you can!